So, my podcast went haywire. I'm using a lot of free gear. And so I'm going to draw a circle. I'm going to keep writing new paint. I've decided I'm going to go draw these diagrams, probably upload these on slides later for people to look over. So we're looking at a bunch of circles. Right, so we're looking at a space hadron collider. And I'm going to go, I'm going to go for a space one. Oh, schizophrenic. Nothing happened. Space hadron, right? Space hadron collider. Right. One of the nicest things I like about so there's a lot of electric. So we got a lot. We're trying to study the electrons, the positrons, the neutrons, and we're trying to figure out what the electron configuration is. So for those who don't know, I'm going to show you a couple. I don't really understand what my higher schematic is, but C6. To 6015. C15 H24O2. Alright, let's say they trade electrons. I just want to think of a compound. I don't really know. Let's say, I'm just going to give you a little lazy schematic. Let's say the hydrogens, right? Want to trade like, let's say they have one electron, they need one from another. So what do? They pair bond, right? And then you start with O to get all your electron subspaces fulfilled, right? That's my guess. And I'm guessing it's because the hydrogen oxygen needs. What are the rules? I don't really care anymore because I'm doing a very simplified schematics. I'm not giving you a very super long description. So so oxygen needs 2 electrons, so they get from the hydrogen, so they fuse and they get water, right? So everything. So why is this important? Because atoms have been time traveling the whole time, right? Through a process called, it's the process of sharing electrons with each other, That's how time travel is achieved, because when the atoms, right, this is a very simplified way to summarize what I'm talking about. When the atoms are staring into space and they're trading electrons with each other, they are looking through an infinite amount of probability paths through that stream of electricity, right? That make up the past, present, and the future. And that electronic wave is giving you the entire linked list node, right? And all the nodes, remember, represent specific points in time that the atom can jump through, right? 1 year back, 1 day, yesterday, right? Or a minute ago. It represents all the individual nodes that represent certain segments or pockets of time. Now, and that's one of the reasons. And I'm guessing we lived in a linked list node, the way we time travel, right? Operates on a linked list, if you ever want to. Now, well, why isn't it a loop? Because the reality is a loop, in my opinion. That'd be great if we could live in a loop universe, actually. Live in a for loop universe. We can't live in one. It'd be great, because then the future could be a feedback loop where it's like, okay, you know, if the present screws up, right, then some variables in the future can help you back, right? And the thing is, that doesn't exist in the greed universe. The greed universe, everyone's not making decisions for the betterment of humanity. Right? They're not really. They're just making decisions for some long-term payout in terms of more cheddar, right? For more money. A loop universe exists where people genuinely want to help each other because they want to help each other. That exists in the universe of something like lust, right? I did a graph on this a while back. Where you had, you got the 7 dead. Like I got like I did some theory where it's like you get 42 total, like all the possible universes are divided into 42 categories, right? There's technically 42 main universes out there, right? And all of the sub universes are derived from those 42. Right. So what universe would have a loop? It would be, it's either lust or envy, right? Love is like the if, and you can tell because the ideal society is one where it's like love we're generally we're incentivized by love, right? That's lust. And so we don't exist in a lust based, like an actual incentivized lust state. We live in a greed based, where everyone takes advantage of each other. And we're you know, it could be a variant of it. Lust is, and lust is definitely at the top. It's either number 1 or 10. There could be a couple sub universes. Right? It could be 18 or something, or 23. It depends. I think now a universe on sloth is different. We're greed. We're not sloth. Sloth is like you pay a transaction by giving them more opportunities to be lazy, right? To do things at a faster iteration. We don't have that. Right? We're given money, but money doesn't necessarily help us in all circumstances of survival, right? Laziness does, right? You can be lazy when you're in danger and still live. So that's what I'm going to go look at. It's a very So let's go look at those electron configuration paths. You need that so you can always have an electron swap every time. That's the purpose of an atom, to form compounds. Now there is a question of, can atoms exist individually, right? Any separate. No, it's not the atoms you should look at. It's the thought. The thoughts can exist individually, and that's smaller than that, right? That's smaller than a quark or a lepton. If you study a quark and a lepton and break it down, you're going to see a thought. Right? Remember in quantum mechanics how when you look at a quark or a lepton, it becomes anything you want to observe stuff. You're starting to see what the substance of a thought looks like. So for those who don't understand what's going on in quantum mechanics, about like, oh, there's magic or something. No, it's not magic. It's the fact that they're trying to study what the composition of a human thought or a thought of an animal. That's what's going on in quantum mechanics. All these formulas are there to quantify what a thought looks like, right? They're trying to quantify the rate, the speed of a thought, right? They're all trying to quantify and find qualitative terms to describe a thought. If the thought appeared in physical form, right? That's the whole purpose of quantum mechanics. Everything is all these formulas, right? It's not gurgly block, right? It's not trying to prove God. It's trying to prove to you that a thought is an actual physical substance that can be discovered by studying a quark and a lepton. That is why you get a lot of these gobbledygook, because they don't understand what and the quantum mechanics people don't really understand what they're studying either. They're studying a thought. Right? They're studying the rate of change, right? The thought is essentially a rate of change, right? Like when you shift to one thought to another, you see change. Right? All these formulas, right? The square root of stuff and stuff, where we're all studying what a thought is. See, it's nowhere on any of these journals, right? Right? Molecular atomic stuff, like no one right now knows what a quantum mechanics is. And what's funny is, I would argue, Planck didn't even know either, because he was too terrified to know what the truth was. It's not that he couldn't know what they were studying. He was just too terrified. Right. He's studying the properties of so-called black body radiation. He's talking about the darkness in all living beings. Right, that makes sense, right? Every living being has a shadow. You could call it sin or whatever you want, but every living being, every object has their own sin, right? It's a shadow. Right? You can quantify a thought in terms of discrete bits, right? So quantum mechanics' whole purpose is to teach you time travel. You may not even need a machine like Doctor Who to study time travel. One of the best ways, that's why I was thinking about it for a little while. So how does this go back to so I'll show you why this is a. So the double slit experiment's whole purpose is to quantify the ripple effect, right? So when you're talking about time travel, we're going to be talking about the ripple effect, the butterfly effect. This is how you quantify the ripple effect in physical format. A thought causes waves, right? A ripple through space, time, right? And so looking at the Hadron Collider, you're studying all the probability paths. It's defined on the computer screen, and you apply a USB port to the microscope, and it's showing you all this data. And what you do with the Hadron Collider is you send a bolt of electricity. You send some electronic wavelength. You send data for the electron to move. Now, when you stare, and I'm saying, well, that can't possibly. Yes, it can. When you stare at a quark or a lepton, it moves. You notice that, right? Well, that's the property of a thought. When you stare at a thought, the thought looks at the brain waves that you're sending out when you're processing information and trying to decide, basically, okay, you also have thoughts. Should I fuse with you? So I can give you new information or data. Now, so I'll show you why. So here's the problem. Quantum mechanics needs a reformation. The reformation they need is they need to accept the fact that a thought is a physical thing. Then everything in quantum mechanics becomes science. It makes sense. Now you can quantify dreams. Everyone's too terrified of that. Then you can then start asking, well, if you can quantify dreams, what can you quantify the substances out of the dreams? Now you can finally decide for the first time whether any of those dreams actually mean something. No one wants to explore that train of thought, but then everything in quantum mechanics makes sense. Right? Your brain is not mystical heebie-jeebie, right? It's not googly block, right? It's something, right? It's something that allows you to learn stuff. Planck wanted to be Planck from Ed, and he wasn't really serious. That's the joke. He already called himself that for a reason. I think he saw it in a dream, didn't want to talk about it. Planck. There's a lot of people, they see this stuff. I really don't. They just don't want to talk about the implications. It's scary. It's terrifying. I don't care. I'm always one of those latchkey kids that really doesn't care anymore. You don't give me what I want, I don't care. So I'll show you this. So this is a I literally right now, if I really wanted to, I could do commercials of a private company and use that as a metaphor to describe everything. Here you go, I just commercialized my video. And commercialize light waves with Amazon. I could just do a little anime manga, show some Whole Foods there. I don't think people in general care about each other. Their favorite hobby is gaslighting. So, and those who wanted to, and there's a lot of obvious hints esoterically, right? Schrodinger, pretty obvious, schizophrenic, right? You feel like you're going to lose your mind when you talk about what I just said. Schrodinger's theory. Schrodinger now knows. He already knew what quantum mechanics is. It's to define a thought. All these light waves and all this stuff is basically to quantify thought. Thought moves at the speed of infinity. you don't want to talk about this. At the speed of infinity, what do you think happens? It's not light. Okay, light's one element. One compound or whatever in the periodic table, right? People lose their shit if they talk about this. I am one of those people where I think about it, I don't really know, not really, I don't care. Because what's the point of knowing stuff if you just can't wake up and function the next day? What's the point of knowing this stuff? It's true. Schrodinger, they've all dedicated life to studying what a thought looks like, how the thought functions, the behavior of thought. Some thoughts have memoryless property, right? Some thoughts just have an angry feeling of anger. And what their design is, all the inventions are designed so that you can actually touch the thought, right? Enter into the thought, right? Right? Thoughts are mystical because we refuse to explore them, right? Look at our conception from childhood to the adult. We're all scared of having a direct conversation. We make movies to escape from reality. Of course people are scared about talking about the actual substance of the thought. We created an entire industry to escape from exploring our own thought. So who is going to talk about a plane? That is what quantum mechanics is. And once you understand what thought is, you can time travel. You start understanding how to transfer with electrons, right? So once you transfer with electrons, you can start going back in time. Right? Because all electrons want to form compounds. Once they form compounds, arguably, they're more powerful in a sense. They're technically not. I make an argument they're more powerful because they can completely alter the chemical compound of all the atoms, right, that form the linked list node, right, that represent time and space. Energy, momentum. I mean, just this is the type of stuff. The quantum world, it's not a quantum world. I don't like the name quantum. What does that mean? Why don't we just call it neuroscience? It doesn't mean anything. It's not going to be any different. So I understand what these math formulas are. Now, I'll show you a formula. And so I need a description. So here's the thing about a lot of these math things. They don't mean anything. I believe everyone has different configuration and skill stacks, right? A lot of people don't want to touch this, but everyone has different skill stacks, and those represent different variations of skill requirements. What we have today with the college prereq system, I do not think that is an accurate classification of the prereqs everyone needs to learn to learn a subject, because everyone's brain is wired differently. So back then, the reason why we had prereqs is because it was for a certain population. It was for the left-leaning hemisphere people. If you ever wonder, they used to only admit left hemisphere. They refused to admit anyone who deviated from the left. There was a discrimination in the system. That's why the prereqs were so simplified. People forgot about that. You cannot admit everyone. And it couldn't just be any people who are left hemisphere. It had to be the rich. It could not be the poor or the middle class, right? The reason why we are allowing everyone is because the poor protested too much. People in the middle class are very good at protesting stuff. They're very good at getting pitchforks. They're very good at throwing stuff. They're not really good at generating cash flow and capital. Seriously, look at the wealth inequality gap. Who do you think they're leaving all the job creation to? The top 1%. On SJW, it doesn't matter what side you're on. You know who's generating all the jobs. Now, whether you think they're nice people or not, it's a different story. Whether you think it's justified, but the reality is that's not sustainable. Right? The middle class should be rich too, right? So they can owe their obligations to the middle class, right? That's how this works. We're a hunter-gatherer tribe, right? We need to help each other, right? Move forward as a species. We can't just always rely on the rich, right? When you have a lot of wealth, the social obligation joke is you are forced to generate jobs for everyone else. There is no choice. The more wealth you have, the more you have to do it. You have no choice but to play that game. That's why it's called the rat race, right? The cheddar race. It always goes to the bottom. And you as the rich always have to drag the bottom to become the new top or the middle. So you can be more top, whatever that means. Why do you think I put a rat on the profile? Because rat race, that's what it means. People aren't going to complain about it. It's about grabbing money, guys. People like to hide from stuff. It's like, well, I'm going to go watch a movie and all this. I can't have a direct conversation. So the cubes and everything, all these dimensions, they're all based on light. So the thing about third, fourth, the sixth, seventh dimension, you see it in physics, right, or quantum mechanics, is that these are defining layers of abstractions for any, it's not there to define what dimensions the aliens live in, or what beings live there. It's there to define your mental, spiritual space. Right? Because the whole point of quantum mechanics is to actually completely quantify and qualitatively describe the supernatural, right? Because the thoughts, right, are probably the ultimatum of what creates, in essence, all the products that we see today. Right? So sine, cosine waves, thoughts are defined by waves. Thoughts are defined by matrices as well, right? Right? Infinity, right? We're seeing a lot of formulas here, and if once you understand how you want to understand, I'm the big argument you're better off understanding how formulas work in terms of pictures. Right? That's what these words are. They're just there to define a picture. And once you understand the pictures, you can understand them. You can come up with the formulas on your own or some approximation of it. The approximation is more than good enough. So, and there's just a, and a lot of these formulas, like, well, rule of three, how to communicate complex. That's not what I'm looking for. Let's go look for a legitimate formula. A wave formula is a good example. That's probably what a thought looks like, how it functions. And you cannot study how a thought functions, at least right now, with the MRI scans. The math formulas they have, way better. Schrodinger equation, right? This is way better in describing the behavior of a thought. A thought definitely has linear partial differentiation, right? It has in relation between various partial, because a thought is always about a rate of change if you think about it. Your thought is multivariable. Right? You're always thinking of different economic variables to move when you're talking to people. You're thinking of different social variables, and each social variable arguably can represent a dimension of a shape, right? Can't you define a social variable as a shape to model how you interact? You can. Yes, you can. This is arguably a good basic model to understanding what the substance called a thought looks like. Very simplified way. Once you go to the seventh dimension, that just means when you're thinking of 7 different variables, that's 7 dimensions, right? So it does not mean the shape has 7 dimensions. It means how you're thinking. You're thinking in 7 different layers of abstraction. And remember, we're visual creatures, right? So what do you think when you're thinking in 7 dimensions? What do you think it is? A shape. It's going to be a shape in your head. You're using your brain thinks in terms of images, right? You're associating an image with a complex topic. A lot of people, when they're talking about this, don't understand this is the way to create memory palaces. Right? This is another argument of how thought works, right? We're seeing a non-relativistic part of, and yes, we're dealing with relative and non-relative objects when we're thinking of stuff. Let's say I want to travel north, south, west, and east. Arguably, that shape, you define the compass as a shape with 4 dimensions, right? To help you remember what it is. When you're remembering stuff, you're using parameters, right? You're using numbers. And those numbers, and the numbers are, basically associated with the intensity, right? The duration, or whatever it is, right? Of certain of all elements, all the elements that make up all the thoughts, right? So Hilbert space. Hilbert space is a vector space equipped with an inner product. The inner product, which allows a defining distance, so it becomes a complete metric space. So how is the Euclidean space? Now this is pointless. This finite dimension may not have a finite. That doesn't really mean anything. Thoughts never have a finite dimension. They have an infinite dimension. That doesn't mean anything. You got to quantify an infinite dimension somehow. You're going to use finite terms. That's where the idea of a feedback loop comes from. That's infinity, right? You look at it. And if you look at how infinity is designed, you got an electron, it's operating under an infinite path. The goal of an electron is to basically recreate a feedback loop around all the other atoms that exist within the subspace called Earth, right? That's part of a larger space called the universe. look at a Venn diagram. It's like 42 circles, and you got like a bunch of these other universes that are in each of their own little clusters. Oh no, people can ask me questions. I can pretty much create advertising commercials for any private company to describe this topic. So this Schrodinger's cat experiment is a representation of what goes on when you think. Think about it. You think you're dead, you're alive. What do you think that is? You have anxiety, you have fear. And the math formulas are just there to quantify and explain it to you. Now, are they the best ways? Not really. But it's a better starting point than, hey, look, your thoughts are mysteries. Why does this matter? You need to play the Schrodinger's cat if you want to figure anything out in life. Right? You got to think about thought experiments when you're learning stuff, right? You're A/B testing thought experiments as you learn concept to concept. And this is also, so you got those electron paths, and you got everything fused together so the atom can form compounds, and the compounds can form other compounds to change events. So the power the atom has is the power of basically shifting everything by just using a couple dynamic rules. So an atom can basically alter the fabric of time, using it. Basically use transformation, right? If you ever seen a what do you call it? I'm trying to find the right words. It can basically terraform. Right? Atoms can terraform. Because once you can manipulate compounds, you can manipulate economic variables because you're manipulating the compounds found in human beings, right? That make up human beings. And they'll never know what happened. Quantum theory rebuilt from simple physical principles, right? So a lot of these things, a lot of people, I hate saying they don't know what they're talking about, but get entangled. When you think in a thought, do you feel like your other thoughts entangle you? So a lot of these things, I don't understand what I think quantum theorists who know it will not stand. What does that mean? Alexei Grimba? Well, it will not. Well, thoughts always evolve. Math people are smart. Don't get me wrong. When you're thinking, you're always thinking Russian roulette, right? Just unexplainable things happen in your thoughts, like, while I'm listening to Dr. Temple's lecture, I'm thinking of porn at the same time. That's not logical. I better erase that thought. As I try to erase that thought, I try to summon fire. But it doesn't work for some reason. I think of a cat all of a sudden jumping out. See, to help me memorize the lecture. Oh no! Now, of course, I'm being passive-aggressive to express something. I don't know. Now then, I think happy thoughts, I think of Clevey. Clevey is always bunnies because I can do stuff faster. This is one of these one of those comments you shouldn't make. But that's an example of quantum mechanics, right? Things just you're either dead, alive. Are you burning? Are you not burning? You're just thinking in multiple states. You're summing the derivative change. Or you're just porting to different dimensions, right? You're thinking in terms. Before I know, all the imagery represents different layers. Before I know it, I'm thinking within like 8 dimensions while I'm in some lecture because I have all these multiple feelings clustering around my mind. And the feelings are defined by a shape. Yeah, that's kind of how this works. Let's see a light constant, the laws of physics. Now, right now, as we know it. Now, why would the speed of light be important in studying a thought? Because our thoughts how we travel, right? How we travel determines how much we complete a task using our thoughts, right? So it gives us a target metric to achieve. So for the summation of all the thoughts, our stream of consciousness society, we need to aim for a target goal. That's all it tells us. And someday we may be able to create ships or some transportation that can travel at the speed of light. Right now, maybe speed of sound, right? It's just a frame of reference, a relative reference, right? Now it becomes non-relative once we achieve the goal, of course, but Right, so there's the tree node, right? The one thing I will point out about probability paths, and once you travel and influence stuff, you as a human, I'll point this out, as a human, you are limited. And the reason why you're less powerful is because an atom can manipulate all the atoms. You as a human can't manipulate atoms. You can only manipulate other humans. So you can only manipulate a small subset of atoms. So you're an atom. Here's a you get more collection of things you can manipulate with atoms. Now here's the funny thing about an atom. The drawback of an atom is that you can't consciously record anything. You can't consciously record any record of time travel with an atom. Atoms have now. It's possible if we believe magic actually exists, of course. But like I said, we're dealing with reality right now. Now we're a stick figure, really. Let's say we travel back in time, right? And you can, when you get your electrons, when you get, so all you can do, right? You can't send your whole body, but what you can send is your neural network when you sleep, right? So you have a microscope, you got the Hadron Collider. What you do is create some sort of Hadron Collider, and you put yourself in it, in a helmet. You sleep. Or you don't even need the Hadron Collider. Once you can create some sort of wireless communicator with the Hadron Collider, you can basically just sleep. And it can be like Pokemon Mystery Dungeon all over again for traveling back in time. And so what you do is you get an RFID chip. You just need a watch, really, an RFID tag, and you get the RFID tag corresponding to the hadron collider to whatever location it is. And they have to link together, right? Ping through a lot of cellular towers. At least that's what I think you can do. And it's like beam, 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 beam. Now it takes a while. There's obviously lag time. And you should have a computer, right? The computer records the wavelengths. And it's connected to the electronic interface. Now, it would be kind of fascinating. You got a phone app, you're plugging it in, and it's transmitting data. It's got some application that runs that basically shares data with the other computer that has the electronic interface. It's telling you how the atom moves. It's getting you data. It's basically telling you, go back in time, right? You probably can't. And in the worst case scenarios, even if you travel further back, you probably can't. Because there's too much stuff on camera. So what I suggest is because of your neural network, right? Which is your digital avatar. It starts forming complex interactions. It starts forming compounds, right? Because your neural network, in theory, should have a memory for how to recreate the human body with the pre-existing molecules that exist. So it's going to go through a little loop around. And it will recreate the human body as long as the neural network starts floating, sending its wavelength. That's the whole point of having a neural network. So you can send your wavelengths and time travel, or one of the main purposes. Right? When you're dreaming, you are, in essence, either running a simulation model test, right, of some danger that's occurring, right? And you're interacting with the larger neural network, right, or the universe, which is another larger neural network. That's why everything's black, right? When you sleep, it's all black, right? That's why the whole vacuum of space is black. Right, and the black holes in the Milky Way star cluster galaxies are all mental states. And those are probably the closest, I would argue, quantification of what a thought looks like. It looks like a Milky Way galaxy. When your neurons are firing from your sleep state for long enough, you see a Milky Way galaxy clustering. And this is why when you travel out into space, and what happens is the electronic waves do not disappear. What happens is they get emitted out into space. And when enough of them get emitted out into space by a living creature, it becomes the byproduct is a Milky Way galaxy, I think. I could be wrong. That's basically what you're seeing, right? And that's why you see some Milky Way galaxies, they have eyes, right? And some of them look, they're giving hints. The universe is giving hints that Milky Way galaxies are basically thoughts or daydreams. When you have enough daydreams, they all condense, right? That's a recent simulation, of course. I guess that's a sign, right? So when you're running multiple simulations, right, in your head, and one of the fascinating things is once a thought, and there's enough thoughts that become byproducts, you're having a bunch of thoughts from other people that are sleeping, you actually can connect. In theory, right? You got an electron, it sends an electronic wave. And the thing about a thought is it travels at the speed of light. A thought is not a light wave. It really isn't. right? So stars within the disk, clumps or clouds of gas. And do they create stars too? Here's the funny thing about the universe. And this is the hilarious part about the universe. You have when you have enough thoughts, you actually create a force. These are universal force constants, right? Gravity or whatnot. Right? Because our thoughts are a subspace of a larger thing called the first thought that made all the other thoughts. We were made by a thought. Our atoms, our hands, your nails, they all formed fusions. They became molecules. They became atoms. And a lot of these materials and resources are basically all the common characteristics, right? That make the components of a thought. We're technically living in it, in one consciousness, right? So in theory, yes, you can time travel, but you cannot time travel to the future. Because when you have a linked node, you create a new one, you gotta take into account your null exceptions. So you can only port for certain events, right? Maybe you can only let's say, and you can't be sure for certain. Let's say, oh dear lord, let's say the Milky Way company, Hershey's, successfully made their Hershey's white chocolate sell like hotcakes. I don't know what their latest product line is, but let's go look at that. I can really literally describe everything in terms of commercials right now. I literally do not have to explain this entire thing. I could literally just summarize this entire thing into a commercial, do like thousands of commercials until you finally get what's going on. Sugar cookie. Let's say the sales, like it's record sales. And let's say you account for all the margin of errors with the anticipated and the unexpected social, environmental, political variables, etc. Right? That go into the Hershey's selling well, right? Let's say in theory you account for everything, so that even a large event like a meteor strike can prevent your Hershey's from selling. It's possible. You might have a really smart fortune teller. I don't know. Let's say that happens. And let's say then you can time travel. You can say, hey, I got that money immediately and port back. But the thing is, once you do that, you got to be safe because you can only there might be other events where you don't account for all those variables, right? Like a liquor store closing down, right? Or I mean, trying to sell well, right? You can't time travel to see if it succeeds or not. So, because when you travel forward into the future, you are not fixing the variables from the past. You have to prep, right? You got to prep. You got to go back a couple nodes to store the data, right? In case when you move the nodes, the current relative point you're at, which is the Hershey store, or not the Hershey store, the liquor store that you're opening, does not get deleted. So the event doesn't get deleted. Sometimes a linked list might be a recursive one, right? We don't know. So if you got to account for that, so you might have to travel back before you travel forward. So that one you can't time travel to the future. The only thing you know for sure you can do is travel back in time. When you time travel. The only way you can time travel forward, it's completely possible, but it's not worth anyone's while. And what you do is get a little list, And you document all the possible macro, micro variables that exist in the world that influence every decision you make every day. No one's going to do that. You do that every day, 24/7, every minute of your life. Now, that implies the fact this there's a time travel universe. It's not worth it. Wow. Because at that point, it's like, well, if I can influence and go back in time, why don't I just make that a part of my daily interaction? Not worth your while. Because the moment everyone prevents anything from happening, you're just back to state zero, right? So, yeah, I've realized I'm better off summarizing a lot of these notes because then I ramble too much. I'm gonna do more. So I talked a little bit about praise. I'm probably gonna go settle with 2-minute Hershey's chocolate commercials. I honestly have no idea. So we were looking at gender neutral pronouns and all this stuff, right? I think if you want to add sales, you want to make more money, you gotta promote gender neutral. You gotta make people believe that whether they do it or not doesn't matter. You make more money. It's kind of like you have become sort of like a mega church, right? I'm not saying you are a church, but you kind of have to behave like one once you become popular, right? Everyone's got a little cult around each other. That's what social media is like. Whether you like it, right? The Church of Tim Pool, the Church of Mark Dice, the Church of PewDiePie. You are a church now. You're this little cult because when you energize people to follow something, right? A cult, at its very basic definition, is a bunch of people following someone, being really enthusiastic. And to get people to buy products initially, you got to get those first-time risk buyers, right? Now, there is an organic reason to form cults. It is to get sales numbers up, right? So you don't spend money on using macro media or not using OpenShot. You don't want to spend money on Canva. That's why you form cults. It's not a big deal. All companies, there's the cult. It's called the U.S. government. They form a cult of personality, right? Get 2 or 3 people. They buy stuff, and then everyone else gets attracted to it. They advertise very ferociously. You do have to have a cult-like mentality. That's not saying it is a cult. I'm just saying you have to use the cult as a model for getting sales, right? Definition: a system of religion federated. It's not religious, right? But you got to have that feeling, right? Very similar to a cult. You gotta have to religiously invest in this product, right? To get people. I remember when Apple started, Steve Jobs got that cult of Steve Jobs, and so he can get advertising, get those R&D sales, so he doesn't have to pay advertisers anything. You form a cult as a way of commercializing yourself, so you get sales without paying them anything. So people buy your Apple products, and then you can start flying like hotcakes. I obviously can't pull that off, so I don't even try anymore. Nothing wrong with it. It's just a cheap way of advertising. As long as it doesn't do anything destructive, do you care? It could be a misplaced or excessive admiration for a particular person or thing. That's the key here, an object. Like an iPhone. Now, cults are bad. if they're destructive, right? People are abused and all that stuff. But I mean, really, it depends on how you angle something. As are all things in life, everything is a complex mixture. The Gateway by Teal Swan. Spiritual guru. So why and this goes to what I'm talking about right now about all these topics. Um, why we're talking about spirituality is because that was an attempt to quantify what a thought looked like, right? Everything spiritual is a way to attempt to study the substance of a thought. That's why spirituality exists, right? That's why we had their big books, and with quantum mechanics for the first time ever in human history, we do not have to talk about the thought in an abstract manner. We can actually use math to actually physically or quantitatively define a thought. And once we can use math models, we can physically define what a thought looks like. We are very close if we can angle it the right way to what appears to be limited time travel. Right? How hypnotic stuff help you to be aimed at people are struggling with depression, etc., etc. And a lot of these, so a lot of cults that get bad press. It's because there's that veneration. It makes people, and one of the reasons why people like criticizing cults is because it makes people feel good about themselves to attack the leader. People feel jealous. They feel jealous of the popular person. Right? They really don't like popular people. Because popular people, back in their childhood, harmed them. They stole lunch money from them. They kicked your ass. And your parents kick your ass too because you got to follow what the popular kid tells you. They didn't stand up for you when you're young, so you're going to hate them. So what does society do when they grow up? They get kicked down in the shin so they learn, right? That's at least as I understand how parenting works. That's what it means by you'll learn it when you get older, right? I talked about this before. People just get beaten down more. So this is the problem I have with a lot of. So the problem I have, and I'll talk about this later, with a lot of conception of cults, they like to think of it. They always show the bad cults, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just it does not allow the person to think objectively. Right? It doesn't help you live your life better. Right? Stefan Molyneux had a cult before. Right? I don't deny that he used cult-like tactics to create something, right? And you got to have a cult to start a business free of charge. One of the most popular ways. What else is a YouTube channel than a business? And of course, he didn't defend himself like that. Right? You just say, "Hey, look, it's a cult. That's true. But do you have any better ideas to make money in a cheap manner? You can form one too." Why don't you do that too? This is the way I would angle it. Cults are the cheapest way to start a business. You can't you seriously tell me you're gonna pay a witch designer like what $100,000 to go fly your e-commerce store? You gotta be kidding me. You're better off just wearing some funny doo-doo outfit, right? Right, you marry some rich chick to get your capital, whatever, right? You're better off doing that. And, okay, it looks cultish. That's fantastic. Just think about this. It doesn't help you live your life. Doesn't help you make money. So yeah, you can. I do not deny when people get more money, they become abusive. That's basically what it boils down to. I'm not defending it. I don't want you to change what you're doing. Feel free to keep doing that. Just know the more you look at that, because our human mind likes to filter out complex information and just try to simplify stuff, the less likely you're going to get anything in life. Cults are a great way. And once you have a cult, like you get business, right? Right? You get people buying this stuff. You look cringe. That's the joke. Right? When you commercial stuff, aren't you cringe anyways? Like, let's look at this. I hate being that guy. Let's look at some Amazon commercials. Better than mine. Mine are just terrible. I have simple short slides because I'm poor. Look at this.
Blinds, showing rosé. Rosé?
Well, it's an afternoon game.
It's like she can read your mind.
I'll be honest, I just enjoy talking about this stuff. I enjoy learning. My life's kind of over. I'm dealing with people that
Extra strength.
I don't like.
I'm thinking, I should get a spray tan, you know? 'Cause that's on Wednesday.
Activating blender.
Funeral's on Monday.
What the go, Papa? Can't you see? The treasure all along.
It was you! You see how cringe that sounds? See, this sounds like, and as a cult, you get this all free of charge. You don't need to pay people. I hate to be plain about it, but that's what Steve Jobs did. Yeah. Why would he explain that to the news media? He could. But the moment you do that, you feel like cutting yourself. It's like, oh yeah, that's kind of why you form a cult, so word of mouth gets maximized. The power of it. You maximize your ROI. Right? When you're buying a product, you're invested in the brand. What else is a cult than the strongest expression of being invested in the identity of the brand? So, with a cult, you can already pull this off. Right? Jeff Bezos, still alive, if still alive. Or alive, right? Sorry, that was a miswording. Right? She bought it at Whole Foods. So a lot of this is just this stuff you can from a cult. Let's say you worship her, right? Because she's like so this she bought it at Whole Foods. So she's happy. They're told that you are looking and let's worship. Ooh, I don't know. Let's pretend that I don't understand anything about all this. The names of the CEOs. I don't even know if it matters. Let's just go look at a. Say, yeah, right. Michael Estet. Let's say he. Because he formed a cult of personality. And every time you worship Michael Estel, you got to get a bunch of people doing this, right? As part of their morning ritual every day during the prayer of rest, whatever he makes up, the prayer of computers on Sunday. You start realizing, doesn't this generate attention to sales? Well, every day we're worshiping Michael Estel. We got a TV. We're all wearing funny costumes, and we're all saying weird shit. Like that. Just have a ritual where everyone's reenacting this. That's what a cult is. Like, this is weird. Then at the end, you worship, you talk to him directly. It's like, oh, hey, right? Finally, that's a commercial for free. Weird music. Every time this is your church prayer. Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies, right? Commercialism. And every time you play the music, it's some new product. New cell phone. And like every day when you hear it, you got to buy a new cell phone and play this song, right? That's where you get a cult of personality from. There are good cults out there, and by that I mean not ones that rip you off so much that you go on a serial killing spree. I'll give you a hint. The Waco compound's a good example of this. He turned away from God. That's kind of why he got shot down and killed. But, like I said, when I'm talking about God, I'm talking about the creature called God. I'm not talking about a deity called God. There is a creature called God, an animal called God that exists, right? And he is, and it is defined by the Bible that this creature exists, right? I'm interpreting this differently. So, you want to know what the creature looks like in physical form. Let's look at Parasite Maxim. There it is. The creature looks like that, right? The creature called God looks like that. He never wanted to go through the path, right? I'm making a lot of guesses. So God is consciousness. God is the I, right? The all-seeing, the all-knowing, right? He never wanted to merge with the creature. And that is why he got shot down and killed by the FBI or the CIA. That is probably what happened to him. Now, if he merged with the creature, there would not have been a search and arrest warrant on him. Right? If he merged, his communications with the creature made him lose his shit. Right? David Koresh lost his shit when he was communicating with God. God in physical format is a creature. Now, in theory, the parasite can communicate you with brainwaves, right? Right. And when you fail, you get attacked by the FBI. I thought this was like everyone knew it, but I'm not sure. Well, I don't know. It's Texas, right? They didn't know. It's Texas. What do you think happened? Right? He fucked a bunch of women. He burned stuff. He had to make himself feel calm like the Ice King, right? You fail. You get attacked by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Right? He got a cult, 25 children. There's abusive. They reported him out. God told him to procreate, right, with women in the group to establish a house of David. So he was communing with God, a creature. He was arming for God to pray for the end of days. He lost his shit, so he could not accurately describe to the public what the end of days is. The end of days, like I already talked about it earlier, is people not protecting the rich, which we were heading towards, by the way. Oh, social inequality, the top 1%. Only the 1% can create the jobs for us. Meanwhile, us poor people, we're relying on those top 1% who have already lost their shit from all the stress of leading the corporation to make jobs for us.
Right? The end of days. That is job requirements continuing to not make any sense for anyone. Right? Joshua Fluke style. He was not saying enough to tell people that. The end of days, right? Americans getting lazier, right? The end of days, right? He never said that, right? Now when I say it, it makes sense. Right? He never wanted to. He lost his shit when he was commuting. When the parasites tried to go through his earlobe, right? And when it tried to go through his hands, he just lost it. Right? Royal blood and the parasite went to him, right? When he started the cult first, and this is the story no one talked about, and I assume people knew because I heard this as a folk tale. I did some investigation on my own a while back. I assume people know. Like if you can't commune with the thing, you lose your sanity. But he still wanted to because he promised him gold anyways. So when the guy started, he just wanted to die. That was the end of days. The job requirements, no one getting a job from the rich because the rich didn't know how to make sound business decisions. And the end of days, middle management dying. And now he had described it like that. Wouldn't that have made more sense? Right? Colleges failing to train CEOs to propel America to a new future. End of days. Back then, we used to do that. You could find a job at every doorstep. If he said that and he formed a cult to start a business, that would have been the right direction. Now, when you pick the wrong choice, obviously the consequence is you get an internal Justice Department investigation. Yeah, it's just you make the wrong choices and you start a fire. Right, the fire destroys compound, 86 dead in total. Yeah, Texas was an economic gold mine. Had he succeeded, who knows? Maybe he could have given Texas some jobs, and if he had done the right thing, maybe there wouldn't be a dry up of economic jobs. Right, there wouldn't be so much gaslighting by the employer about what you're expected to do for your job. Right, maybe the world would have been a better place if he had made the right choice. This is the big if series, right? If David Howell Koresh made the right choice, maybe we could have been saved from the current melees of rich people not making big business ventures, right? By creating a new class of new money, right? That actually cares about the interests of those below them. So what about procreation? This is what you call getting seed capital, right? So I hate putting in that term, but seed capital is basically if you and part of his deal is I'm pretty sure he had to procreate to with rich women to get money. He really did not want to do one where he actually had to sell a product like Steve Jobs. He was going to go the Steve Jobs route. And God, the parasite was like, yeah, I don't want, no, whatever. He wasn't happy. Like, really, you don't want a community? Yeah, I really, I need people like women. Can you help me hypnotize them or something? Because I'm really stressed out when I talk to you. You're really autistic, or whatever it was. Right? He had to legally change his name, David Koresh. Now the change in name is because he lost his sanity, right? Right. Well, when he was sane, it was called Vernon Howell, right? And it's like the Joker. So when he changed his name here, he's like, you know what? I can't handle being with God anymore, right? establishing a personal relationship with the parasite called God. So now I'm going to become David Koresh, my alter ego. Right? Because he knew that no one wanted to actually care for one another anymore in America. Enough where they could become a CEO and give jobs to people. He lost it. So he couldn't describe anything in simple in a sane world. So obviously we need to obviously you get 5 days. So this is the problem. When you're dealing with God, you got to do the right thing. You got to do right with God. Otherwise, you lose your shit and start militia. You go on a serial killing spree. That's what happens when human beings lose their sanity. And of course, America is the land of the sane, home of the brave, of the bold, supposedly. Right? They all think they're mature. And Rodden attempted to resurrect, and he used on three occasions. There was a joke. That third time's the charm, right? It was probably going to work if David Koresh actually successfully merged with God, which didn't happen, by the way. The parasite was in a jar or some lab, right? So let's. If I swear, is thing Yu-Gi-Oh! There's something called a slime token. That's pretty much that's what God appears in this form too. Aristotle, Slifer, the Sky Dragon, they have slime tokens. God looks like this too sometimes. He appeared like this, I think, right? Because they're talking about sperm and stuff. So God changes form depending on what it is you need to do to follow His path, right? What job class you take. He's a stat booster, right? He's a parasite or a stat booster. So the parasite can change forms. It's a revival jam, and he can revive people. Right? Because what else do you think is he tried to revive Anne Hughes three times, right? After she died. So I'm guessing God looks like this. It's funny thing to speculate about. A revival jam. Oh, that's a parasite. Obviously, it's got to crawl up your skin, infect you. Now, I'm just saying right now, I'm not going to say it's a deity. I'm an atheist. It's an animal. And I like to avoid dangerous animals if I can. So can God now? If God, no, obviously, obviously he was going to look like a humanoid slime. Clearly, but in all honesty, David was supposed to merge. He probably could have just held off the cult and focused on retaining his sanity under any conditions. Did military training. Of course, David Koresh said, "F that." That's probably the sane way to go about it. Now, God is conscious. Now, obviously, you can't evolve into that. into something like this. But is it worth your while? No. Like I said, I'm just giving you a frame of reference with what God looks like. The parasites are smart. They're not stupid. You really want to evolve into this where you just get shot and killed by everyone? You just chill and grill. You are better off than not. You want to look at your chances of survival. And the more you survive, the more you can gather wealth and the more you can evolve, right? You want to evolve into something like this. You do not want venom. You want something, you want a bird girl. This gets you in trouble in society. The popo come, the Federal Bureau of Investigation starts shooting bullets at you, right? Hunter x Hunter comes after you, right? This bird girl from Monster Musume does not get you in trouble. Now, can God the Parasite merge with anything? So this is the sad world we live in. I cannot be mature talking about this because I look at the news cycle. I'm thinking to myself, huh, they're paid to talk about that garbage? Well, people don't like me. Oh well. This is what someone from the star seeds come from. Ooh, look, it's an adorable dino bird. This is a perfect way to merge with society. The wrong way is venom. See that looks angry. Venom needs to look like a lowly girl. That's that. I'm sorry. No one is going to accept this. This is how you get the cops coming after you, right? Even if that is what God looks like. You're better off hiding and eating chickens. You want higher quality food? Fine. If I had venom, I probably would just say, you know what? I'll just integrate with fully. I'll just tell you you're better off eating chickens. Though. We have to go rob stuff. We got to burn some buildings. You're better off just eating shit and making money as a news reporter. You got this. This could have been avoided. Some people don't like you. They want to focus on themselves. But if you're going to take something, you should account for all consequences. Now you get these two little things fighting. They're shrieking, right? That's not acceptable. This dino bird is acceptable. Adorable little birdies that look like chicks. They're shaking their booty apparently. And they're all rattling their sabers, their wings, whatever. They're flapping their wings. Flap, 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 flap. Of course, remove the L in the loser, of course, you get something else. Because you know why that's acceptable now. I'm very plain about this. Oh, no, it's time to call people out. Oh, we're done being immature. We're done pretending like this is not a thing. Look at those dino birds. Don't care if I lose all my friends. Call people out for what they're doing. Yeah. So there are a lot of flashpoints where we could have had a business event. That's why I think it's big. This is funny. I don't know what I'm gonna do for the rest of my life. I think I'll keep doing videos. I'm trying to be mature about what God could look like as these things, and these terrify people. So for offspring, Mr. Clone merged. And anyways, I'm gonna end this podcast here. I'm gonna play commercial skits of this entire topic, these concepts, right? If you see a social node network, I'm talking the atom traveling back in time, traveling forward. I'm gonna be doing commercials. Hostess cakes communicating with each other, right, as an example. Or I'm doing cashews forming a social node network. I'm gonna like Photoshop all this. I'm poor, by the way. Hi, my name's Douglas. I'm a poor Amazon worker. I have live cashews, right? Delicious and healthy. Right? The premium quality cashews are all communicating with each other. They're atoms. Look at that. And they all have, and you don't have to show the price tag. It's $78. Forget about the price tag. Just think of the experience. Whatever. Now if you look at me, I'm like, oh, how much does that cost? Of course, but as long as I'm there sniffing stuff in your store, that means I'm more likely to buy something instead of nothing. Like, what a waste of time. Well, remember, everything starts from a waste of time if done productively. You cannot get people with honesty. You have to get them with anger. Remember Trump? He's sniffing Russian dirt. He's interested. What could it possibly be? It was a waste of time. Right? People always, when you advertisements are a waste of time for a reason, because it draws people in. The experience draws people in. Russia collusion, like it or not, is great advertising commercial for progressive. I'll totally make so much money if I was a Republican. If I was a progressive selling dirt to help the Republicans win. I wouldn't care about my party. What party? Where's my cash? Where's my Pat Robinson retirement plan? I don't care. Where's my Koch brothers retirement plan? I'm just gonna go sell some Russian dirt, right? It's not real, but it draws people in. You find it out. You find out like, and the same feeling admitted by Donald and these other people of like, no, it's a waste of time. Same feeling you as the customer get when you get hooked in by a commercial. It's the exact same feeling. Politics has always been used for sales. This isn't healthy, right? Just let's go advertise some other things. I don't know why Amazon. How much money is Amazon Whole Foods taking? I guess a lot of people shop at their store. Oh, maybe they're not doing well. The thing I don't like about I'll have to go look for another job. I cannot run a business. I wish I could. Otherwise, I would. I wouldn't be stuck here if I could run a business, bro. I can't even get any customers. I can't draw anything in. No one's giving me a verbal lecture on how to start business. I guarantee I would love to get sitting down for verbal smackdown. Bonobos at bonobos at apple pie. Anyways, yeah, apple pie. You're a Bobo's original bar, oat bar, and you're traveling back in time to talk about Amazon to communicate with. You're trying to form a compound with the Amazon cashews. Yeah, now you feel hungry while watching that. Now you're like, huh, I'm more interested in learning. You can advertise using it as a Feynman method metaphor. Yeah, and the lady is the one time traveling, right? She's using the Bobo's apple. She's like she's Steins Gate, right? She's really trying to study how that bar interacts, right? She knows her skin's made out of oat bars, right? That element called oat bars. It doesn't have to be real; it just has to be some rough approximation of the truth. It does not have to be super accurate. I could have an H2O compound. It could look like a berry strawberry, right? You know what I'm talking about. Just advertise every step of the way. I can do that. I might do it for free because it's fun. I don't do anything these days. I mean, my friends. Well, I'm schizophrenic. I think they ghosted me. Hey, look at these toast styles. Remove wrapper and place your nature's pants. Huh, that's interesting. My C16H or whatever, right? Whatever it is, right? The ammonium or whatever that the element is. It looks like this unfrosted berry strawberry. It doesn't have to be completely logical. You create this as a new language, right? Advertise so much. It'll be so fun turning my entire scientific content into a commercial skit. And maybe the carbon is maple brown sugar and unfrosted berry strawberry, right? They fuse together, right? That the boxes are sharing electrons, they're fusing. It can. And it's not exactly, it doesn't look exactly like that, but it helps you remember stuff, doesn't it? It's kind of like I'm self-creating my own feedback memory palace loop, right? While at the same time being a commercial, quasi-commercial. These fruit mini bears. These fruit minis bears. Look at those koala bears. Those You know what's funny? The scions look like Parasite Maxim, depending on the circumstance. So if you've ever listened to the creature called God, his voice sounds different depending on what type of sounds playing in the what type of sound you're exposed to, right? Secondary sound, what type of white noise you're exposed to, background noise. Now, background noise is flexible. Sometimes you might hear like let's look at let me go play a song. This is funny. Let's say you play something like this, right? God will sound different, right? This will be your background noise. You're listening to this. God's voice sounds a lot different, right? And so it's a background noise to the voice called God. You're hearing two different ambience. Trust me. So when you're listening to some creature called God or anything that you call the creature called a deity, I'm not going to call that omnipotent. No, I'm an atheist. So let's say you listen to music like this. You're going to hear God in a very different manner. Because the wavelength of here alters the wavelength you're hearing when you're communicating with God, right? And this is background noise. When you hear other people chatting or playing music, you may hear nothing. If you're having a sign or you're communicating with something else, you're going to hear the voice differently. You're going to interpret things differently depending on what other sounds you're exposed to. And this makes sense because when you're modifying an audio file, right, when you're hearing the voice of God or whatever it is, like if you look at an audio file in Audacity, right, obviously you may not be able to hear the whole message, right? So you got to remove the background noise to hear it like actually clearly. That's why you need a sound room to listen to God accurately. You might hear things differently, you might interpret, and now of course, it's not just that influences you, it's also your vocabulary bank that affects your interpretation. And your knowledge of, it's not just vocabulary bank. It's also an accurate journal recording of what's happened, whatever led to this, whatever day you're living in, right? Yesterday, the day before, an accurate documentation of the events that occurred. All these factors influence what you hear from God. So, to summarize in short, it's the knowledge you gained that you know about the world, all the disciplines you learned, and the background noise that you're exposed to that basically determine what you hear in the what type of voice, what the voice sounds like when you hear God. That's basically what's going on. Because God, like I said, is an animal. It's a parasite. It's a stat booster. It's forming a symbiotic relationship with you. So let's see. I'm gonna go. Yeah, this is kind of what happens when you're. So if you hear weird voices, and you still hear it, like after you work for a company, this is an example of encountering God. Chances are you've encountered something weird. And it's following you somehow. It's targeted you with its brainwaves, right? So this is a very so how do you define a scion? It's quantum mechanics, partial differential equations, signal processing, Fourier analysis. These are all designed to modulate and calibrate the behavior of the brainwaves that make up the psionic connection. Right? Sobolev spaces helps as well. Right? Quantum mechanics, trying to model the dimension of the voice. Signal processing, right? Electrical engineering subfield focus on analyzing, modifying, and synthesizing signals, right? This is how you this is why when you talk to the creature called whatever it is, you're gonna hear different sounds because all waves are signals that synthesize other to form a different mixed signal, right? For analysis, it's maybe represented by sums of simpler trigonometric functions. If you do this and you explain the waves you got in the form of amplitudes and all these things, you're going to find some consistency, actually. A lot of consistency. And if you do enough of these trig formulas, right, in a Fourier analysis, what you end up finding is chances are if your brainwaves altered and they're very and you do your own little MRI scan, if you find a consistent change in the brainwave as like compared to like before you walked into the corporation and then after, the rate of change remains the same. And so let's say the rate of changes here. So you got a derivative. I don't know what you do. So you take the derivative, it gets you something like that, or whatever the hell it is, right? I don't really know math exactly. Right, you got that little spike right there. This is your new wavelength, right? I just call this a wavelength, right? Because wavelengths can follow something like this. Let me know if I don't make sense. But I think that's what as I interpret it. Yeah, wavelength is like you realize, okay, I'm actually commuting with something. That is your scientific way to prove it. Right? You're trying to modulate your brainwaves. Now, if everyone does a brainwave study, this is a way to prove paranormal activity. And the derivative rate of change is the same brainwave, right? You all do the same activities, right, for a month, and you see the change compared to like before you entered the company until after. That is definitive proof that you are encountering paranormal activity. When you get your Fourier signals, they're all showing definitive rate of changes, right? Your signal processing, and you show the change brainwave. There you go. Paranormal activity existed. Now, if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. Reality is there. It happened. With the inner product, like that implies a distance function, right? If you have the metric space, right, and if the distance, space, that's not relevant. But yeah, so if your trig formula show change, if your derivative show change, if your integrals of that wave that demonstrate, that define the area under the curve, if they're all matching up, you definitely have paranormal activity. If you there are other ways you do it. Are Cartesian coordinates, of course. You model 4D shapes of your thoughts, and if they all represent a similar shape, that's and those shapes happen because of the wave, right, that you're exposed to. If the shapes are the same, hey, that's paranormal activity quantified right there. Now you can actually have proof with our MRI scan. Let's say you're exposed to paranormal activity, and everyone was. If the waves are the same, the change in the result of the end product of the wave, right? Of the what do you call it? Of the vector space. whatever space it is the same. Right? See, here's another one. If you have the same spherical harmonics pattern, I think you could define the sine waves and the cosine waves in terms of spherical harmonics, right? You can define, you can classify them as special functions, I think. You have a good if a consistent mathematical analysis represents some spherical harmonics series 1 or whatever it is, I don't know. Let's look at the list of mathematical functions. If they all represent, these are part of the harmonic series, yes. Let's say they all represent an elliptic, right? An elliptic integral. It's some elliptic integral that's and of course you can also map it. Okay, I already talked about mapping, but if you can map that integral and stuff like that, just going back to what I talked about, about the integrals in the circle there, you can map it as the same shape and everything. There you go. That's why imaginary numbers exist. That's an attempt to actually quantify supernatural paranormal phenomena right in front of you. It's so science can actually study. Right? People are like, well, you can't explain the unexplained. Well, now you can. The unexplained is going to appear in one form, right? When you're processing reality, you're processing sound, arguably. I think you can process reality through sound. The modular angle, the elliptic monsters, these things are there mainly to help you quantify. So why would you want to quantify if the supernatural if it only appears often? I'll tell you why. Because the supernatural, at the end of the day, is a reflection of our neural networks. It's a reflection of who we are as a species. To not know who we are as a species is to say we don't want to learn, right? We don't want to learn how to process information faster. Right, so a lot of these incomplete elliptic integral is that you can never truly integrate these. And the reason why why these formulas exist is because like Andre, or whoever his name is, tried to quantify psionic connection, right? They all did. This formula right here is a way of demonstrating the existence of a psion, or a ghost, or a demon. Anytime you see an incomplete formula where the integral is never truly done, chances are that's probably the wavelength for a psion, right? That's why people came up with this. They're hearing the paranormal activity in the form of sound. And I think in theory, let's go look at this. Can you process sound into colors? Here it is. Sound color synesthesia, right? You don't have to have chrome. It's a type of synesthesia, right? It focuses on experience. Like, there you go, right? So that's where all these trick formulas come from. When you can process sound, you can process reality. Once you understand what kind of sounds process certain kinds of reality, you can start seeing the supernatural, right? That's how these formulas came into being. Right? A lot of these people were trying to understand how to commune with God, right? This is kind of the stuff people don't talk about in history. Jacobi Ellipti, he too wanted to not talk about what he was communing with in a sane manner. And obviously David Koresh's job is to talk to God using these things. And record his holy blessing, right? Whatever that means. If you don't believe me that animals can be called God, look at how many Americans buy dogs. Now look at that religious fervor, that beautiful, beautiful love for the dog. What does that feeling eerily reminiscent of worshiping God? This is it's just one of those things. Now, incomplete elliptic interval, the second kind. We have a lot of these, right? This is another incomplete formula. More evidence of. That's the joke. You can't truly take the integral of a supernatural, right? Right? You cannot really integrate on something that is undefined. That is what supernatural is. Now science can study it. Science can finally study the paranormal. No one wants to be playing about why these formulas come in. This is not gibberish, okay? If you hear like some students say, well, some of these formulas seem like gibberish, just remember people are studying trying to quantify the paranormal. That's why it sounds like gibberish. It's not gibberish. That's the joke. People are just too terrified to talk about what it is they're trying to quantify out loud. Right? The stuff that no one wants to know, like, oh, did that lady look like Medusa? Did she summon snakes? I'm seeing it through a certain sound wave. Let me record it on my math formula. Right? This is called a brutal honesty time, because the moment you talk about it, you suspect. Hopefully America's mature. Imaginary transformations. This is all pretty much referencing. So ghosts can transform and move. Basically, they can move. In theory, I think they were trying to get magic. I'm like 99 to 100% sure about this. Maybe if they learn how ghosts move, maybe they can move just like them, right? If you turn into a ghost, isn't that magic? Or a sign. They're trying to quantify the mark of the beast, so like a lot of things, right? Bigfoot. Right? The 6 transformations, right? I'm guessing. I think, and I could be wrong, you're trying to, these people are trying to quantify the thoughts of your 6 senses from an occultic reference. I'm not sure. The Jacobi transformations, right? The antiharmonic groups. You saw the scion of sound, the scion of sense, the scion of taste. These are the 6 main templates to create the other scions, right? Because the scions communicate to you using your 6 senses. people want to talk about. And it's defined by a lot of these matrices, like the derivative CS. Let's see if I understand this. Is that other function ratios of these three except their inverse. So are psions inverses of something? Of course. What's the inverse of physical reality? Imaginary reality. From a esoteric standpoint, they are an inverse of physical reality, right? Looking within yourself. So people understand what's going on. That's basically it. Now, why would you teach this? Because if you work for a private corporation, you're going to be exposed to a lot of paranormal stuff. This is just a way to keep yourself sane and possibly utilize the supernatural to help you come with groundbreaking, innovating ideas. Some of these, the mean of IR, right? These are just certain transformations that define one of the wavelengths emitted by whatever the ghost is speaking. So basically, paranormal phenomena are just sound waves. Some mansions, right? You see those haunted places. They always emit certain sound waves depending on the condition. So you can't always see it. Now the trick to seeing a ghost every time is to figure out how to get that sound wave to appear more and more. So ever wonder why Tesla can talk to aliens? He's talking radio waves. He's not being plain about it. He knows how to replicate the harmonic waves, right, to create the transformations. Right? He's able to transform the sound waves. So he's always talking to aliens all the time. Now, I think before he died, he burned the radio down. Because he just didn't like humanity. One minus m is the complementary of m. So a lot of these other formulas for the, let's call it the ghost or the scion, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what are the better term. Let's just call it the paranormal phenomenon. It really doesn't matter. It's just paranormal technically. And now some people, because we process sound different, something may appear as a ball of light. Other people might appear as Bigfoot. Or some bear. It really depends on how what hemisphere brain you're using, right, to process information. You're interpreting the wave differently. Yeah. So you got 1 divided by the common area m. Now, these transformations exist. These Jacobi transformations basically exist because you may want to define the complementary of a wave, and that's important. Right? And that is to calculate proper probability paths. And they exist. These Jacobi transformations for this one exists. There's always complementary path that exists for each of the 6 senses, right? This is a way to quantify the supernatural. If you ever see a gibberish math formula, we're all trying to explain the supernatural right now. So you have a record of what happened, and you create some sort of grimoire, right? Right? He's like, hey, look, I saw a ghost. So if you want paranormal activity next time, try to record what the wave of the paranormal activity is next time. And now you can get to see the ghost over and over and over again. You just record it basically. Exactly the way it was, right? When you carry the recorder with you. This is the reason CSNSDS represents